Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Out of the Gun Gourmet. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make herb folded pasta. But if you want to leave the herbs out, that's totally up to you. Remember to hit like and subscribe, and let's start cooking. For this recipe, you'll need all-purpose flour, olive oil, eggs, thyme, chive, and tarragon. First thing you'll want to do is weigh out 300 grams of flour. In another bowl, separate 5 egg yolks and 1 whole egg. Now we're going to add 1 tablespoon of kosher salt to the flour and mix it in thoroughly. In the bowl with the eggs, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Next, we're going to put the flour on the table in a large mound and form a well in the center. Pour the eggs and olive oil into the well. Use one hand to mix the egg and olive oil mixture in the center of the well, while you're using your other hand to add small amounts of flour. Make sure to maintain the well while you're mixing the flour into the egg, otherwise you might end up with egg all over the table. And speaking from experience, it's not fun to clean up. When all the egg is mixed in, start to knead the dough. Add a little bit of water if your dough is still too dry to come together. Knead the dough for about 8 minutes. You could do this in a KitchenAid with the dough hook attachment, but I prefer to do it by hand personally. Once you're done, wrap it and let it sit at room temperature for at least 20 minutes. While the dough is resting, you can get your herbs ready. Pick and finely chop a quarter bunch of each of the herbs. I'm using thyme, chive, and tarragon. I like this herb combination because the flavor goes well with a lot of different dishes. You could use many different herbs as long as they aren't too wet or tough when you finely chop them. For example, I'd stay away from something like rosemary because it would still have quite a bite even when finely chopped. And herbs like cilantro and basil bruise and blacken very quickly and will be quite wet in the dough. Mix all your herbs together so they're evenly distributed. Once the pasta's rested, cut it into quarters. This pasta dough will appear drier than most other recipes, and that's normal because when you're adding herbs to it, they do contain a small amount of water, so they'll add the extra moisture that you're missing. Lightly flour one of the quarters and roll it out so that it could fit into the pasta machine. Keep the other dough covered with a damp cloth while you're not working with it. Start rolling out your pasta on the widest setting and then move down 1 notch at a time. I assume that all pasta rollers have the same gauge, or at least all the ones that I use have, 1 being the thickest and 8 being the thinnest. and I rolled this pasta out to 5. I stopped there because you don't want the pasta to be too thin or it will shred when it has the herbs in it. Lay the pasta sheet flat on the table and fold it halfway to mark it. Sprinkle herbs on one half and then fold the other half of the pasta sheet over top. And fold the other end in to get a more rectangular shape. Start rolling out the pasta from the widest setting just as before and going down one notch at a time. Again, rolling it out from 1 all the way to 5. Lightly flour the top of the pasta sheet, flip it over, and roll it to be cut later, and repeat this process with the other 3/4 of the pasta. I'm fortunate enough to have this KitchenAid attachment, making rolling out pasta very easy, but there are other alternatives. There are electric as well as manual pasta machines that will do the job just as well. Or you could go super old school and roll it out with a rolling pin, but that is a very challenging as well as time-consuming process. I prefer fresh to dry pasta because I feel like it has a very satisfying bite to it. And when it comes to store-bought pasta, I feel like the texture has a slight chalkiness to it. But fresh pasta is tender yet firm when you cook it properly, and it's absolutely delicious. To cut the pasta, I just use a lightly floured sharp knife. I cut the pasta about a ½ an inch thick and unravel it onto a lightly floured baking tray. You could cut your pasta sheets as thick or thin as you want them. Now, I don't normally have as much trouble as you see me having here unraveling the pasta, but I have the pasta sitting a little bit longer than usual, and it is a time-sensitive process. If you find yours sticking like this, just unravel it piece by piece and it will still come out just fine. Now, when it comes to storing fresh pasta, I always portion it before I do anything else with it. And to freeze it, I'll make sure to freeze it first on the baking tray and then put the frozen portions into individual bags. And if I'm storing it in the fridge, I'll leave it on the floured baking tray and be sure to use it up within the next 3 days. Don't be afraid to toss your freshly cut pasta in a good amount of flour. You really want to make sure that it's coated in the flour so that it doesn't stick together. Nothing would be worse than doing all that work to end up with a big ball of dough. After all your dough is unraveled and tossed in flour, it's ready to portion. If I were doing this in a restaurant, I would be portioning it to about 6 to 7 ounces, but at home I just use the palm of my hand as the portion size. Give each portion a slight twist before you lay it down so it forms a nest. Cooking fresh pasta is also quite easy. Drop one portion into a pot of boiling water and give it a quick stir so it doesn't stick. Then once the pasta floats to the top of the water, it's done. It shouldn't take any longer than 45 seconds. Now that you know how to make pasta, tell me in the comments what dish you're going to be making. And remember to like, subscribe, and keep on cooking.